Chapter 4, Lesson 9, Qualitative Graphs. You will be able to sketch and describe qualitative graphs. Qualitative graphs are graphs used to represent situations that may not have numerical values or graphs in which numerical values are not included. In other words, there are no numbers involved. The graph below displays the water level in a bathtub. Describe the overall change in the water level over time. So here on the bottom is our time, and the y-axis represents the water level. This first part is increasing, and it's a straight line, which tells me it's increasing at a steady rate. From this point in time to this point in time, there's no change, which tells me the water level stays the same. And then it decreases at a steady rate until there's no water left in it. So now let's explain that in words here. So the bathtub starts off empty. It is then filled at a constant rate. The water is turned off and sits in the tub for some time. Then the water is drained at a constant rate. Oops. So this is what's happening in that graph, and that's all you are doing is explaining what you see. A couple things I want to point out. When you have a constant rate, that's shown by a straight line. This is not part of the answer. This is just some notes I want you to jot down. So your straight line could either be increasing, decreasing, or straight across would mean nothing is happening. Just as in this case, there's no change. Letter B. The graph below displays the temperature throughout the day. Describe the change in temperature over time. Well, it looks like the temperature is increasing, but not at a steady rate, and then it's decreasing. It hits a maximum temperature here, and then decreases and goes down. So let's write that up in words. The temperature rises at a varied rate until it reaches a maximum temperature. It then decreases at a varied rate. Now I know it's not a constant rate because I don't have those straight lines. Oops. There we go. So varied rates, and this is again more notes. Varied rate is shown by curved lines. Which could be like this or like that. One increasing, the other decreasing. Those are varied rates. Letter C. The graph represents revenue from a local clothing store. Describe the sales over time. Well, in this graph, we do see it increasing really throughout the whole graph. However, there are a couple dips in there where it did not increase. So, the sales generally increase over time, but there are two periods where sales decrease. Sketch qualitative graphs. Qualitative graphs represents the essential elements of a situation in a graphical form. You can sketch qualitative graphs to represent many real-world functions that are described verbally. So letter A tennis ball is dropped onto the floor. So I want you to imagine dropping a tennis ball onto the floor, not throwing it, not tossing it in the air, simply dropping it. On each successive bounce, it rebounds to a height less than its previous bounce height until it comes to rest on the floor. Sketch a qualitative graph to represent the situation. So our first label here on our x-axis is time. Our y-axis label would be the distance from the floor or the ground. So what happens, we start at any height here, not on the ground, okay? Some height, doesn't really matter where. What's going to happen is that ball is going to drop to the ground and then bounce up and drop to the ground again, the height never reaching the height it was dropped from. Okay, so it looks like that. And that's all we do for this problem. Letter B. The child swings on a swing. Sketch a qualitative graph to represent the situation. So again, we have time as our x-axis. Our y-axis would be distance from ground. Now remember, a swing doesn't start off on the ground. So we are not starting down here. We're starting somewhere around here. It's close to the ground, just not at the ground. So we get higher off the ground and go back to that same level. Higher from the ground and go back to that same level. Higher and go back to that same level. Now eventually they'll slow down and the graph will show these getting smaller as well. Letter C. A car is traveling at a constant speed. The car slows down steadily to come to a rest at a stoplight. Sketch a qualitative graph to represent the situation. So, our x-axis will be time, and our y-axis will be speed. So the car is traveling at a constant speed, and then it slows down steadily to come to rest at a stoplight. So constant speed, and then it slows down also steadily until it comes to a stoplight, which means at a stoplight its speed is 0, which is why it reaches the bottom of our graph.